Hello there. What's going on, everyone? We are live, and I can't see out of this thing at all. I can't. I don't know why I'm doing this. This is a bad idea. Now it's stuck. Now it's stuck. I wanted to do a live stream and talk about Atomic Mass Games, and all right, we got it off. We got it off. I don't know how everybody on TV, when they take their helmets off, has perfect hair. That's what I want to know. But maybe that's a better question for another video. So what's going on, everyone? We're gonna chat about today a little bit about the news, a little bit about Atomic Mass Games taking over, and more importantly, their specific discussions about how they are going to be looking at new games, because we talked about this briefly. And I wanted to come back and have a discussion, and kind of talk about, just a little bit about everything related to what's been going on. So Atomic Mass Games is going to, has, if you haven't heard already, it has taken over is taking over. We still don't know when this is final, but Atomic Mass Games is taking over all of the Star Wars miniatures games. So X-Wing Armada and Legion are leaving FFG and going to AMG, which makes Marvel Crisis Protocol and is still a relatively new studio. So I wanted to sit down and kind of run over a couple of ideas, because I had some new ones, and there was some stuff that was brought up in chat during one of the last live streams that I had missed, and I think there were some really good ideas. So, and You sure looked disappointed the other day when you found out FFG was dropping Star Wars. Yeah, because it's a lot of uncertainty. A lot of what I do is kind of based around being able to make predictions, based on like a steady flow of new products coming out and kind of knowing the future. And it's also my personality. I like to know what's coming. I like to have at least a steady flow of a blend of, we know what's coming as far as things that have been revealed. We also know that like every 6 months or so there should be another wave of this and that, and we kind of have a rough timetable of when to expect certain things, so it allows me to keep hype going and all of that. And with all of this change that is on the horizon, it makes it really hard to predict not just specific units and expansions that are going to come out for a game, but what the next game might be, or what game might get shut down, or what the future is going to hold, or what a production schedule is going to be like, or who's going to be working on what games, what new directions might they take those games, what games might get dropped to make way for new games, what games might get a second edition, what games might get fundamentally changed, what games might get a third edition, and so like there's so much going on. I've been really stressed out, and it has an effect. It takes a toll on me. So, and I don't have to have the answers to those questions, but my nature is to want to come up with potential answers for those questions and explore them and talk about them with you guys. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the different ideas, and there's a nice chat in the comment right now about a 15mm ground game. That is certainly a really cool option. I think the ideal ground game would be an X-Wing scale. I think it could be. I think you kind of label it as a ground game, and make all the X-Wing stuff legal for it. Or at least make it fully compatible. I don't know if you make it legal for it. I could see Atomic Mass Games doing is using the same general system that X-Wing uses as far as actions and dice, the same dice and everything for X-Wing. So make it be kind of in the X-Wing universe, but make it a ground game. And what I would do is I would make it actually compatible, although maybe not tournament legal, with all of the X-Wing stuff. So if you wanted to have X-Wings come on board and do, an attack run on ground targets, then make that be a possibility. But have the ground units, like in that scale. It works so well because you can do so much more. And we're seeing more and more vehicles show up in canon all the time. You know, like vehicles in Legion are really big and really expensive. And if you wanted to run any of the big, large, epic ground battles we see in Star Wars, you can't do that in Legion. Legion was made with minis meant to try to. It feels like they were trying to do a kind of a balance to 40K, or you know, trying to compete with Games Workshop, and as such, they're so big that to make stuff in that scale, it makes it really hard to do you know, big, large scale Grand Army kind of battles. And even doing a Grand Army battle in Legion still doesn't feel like a Grand Army. It makes it feel like, you know, a single battalion. You know, I mean, heck, way less than a single battalion. It seems. Oh, well, I mean, I guess it all depends on what kind of battalion you're looking at. You're looking at a combined arms, more like a company, really. But yeah, you need to try some Flames of War or Team Yankee. Yeah, I've heard people talk about Flames of War. I don't know much about it. I've never really seen it played or whatever, but from what I understand, you can use all your own minis, and so like that sounds like it has some attractiveness to it. But so yeah, a 10 millimeter game would work out really, really well, or something like that. Now, I don't know if you do like in a 10 millimeter game. I don't know if you do like individual troops, because I feel like they'd be really small. Like they'd be like this small, like for, you know, or something like that for you know, a platoon of individual troops or something like that. So I'm kind of like a squad. I think you would call it a squad, like a, you know. But I think you could. I think you could get away with it. Like honestly, the quality of the stuff that they're doing in hard plastic. Now you might have had a harder time doing it in soft plastic, but you can do it in hard plastic. It'd be a rough one to try and paint them. That is for sure. But Armada or Crisis Protocol, which one to buy? Armada, I mean, it's my favorite. Crisis Protocol is good too. I'll come back to that. But I feel like you could probably get away with doing some individual ground troops and stuff like that. But the strength in the game would really be in the vehicles. You get like AT-ATs that are probably about this big, you know, and that'd be great. That'd be a good size. And you can do all the other stuff. You can do everything else. You can do the bigger walkers. You can do the juggernauts. You can do the Clone Wars. You can do all three eras with that. Although, granted, I don't, you know, I'm not really a big fan of those sand skimmer things that the Resistance used in Episode 8, because those were Rebel vehicles anyway. I don't think, you know, Rebels and Resistance need to be two separate factions. I think the New Republic is its own faction, so someday we'll get proper like New Republic military, and we're getting more and more and more of that as things go. Drop Zone would be a good 10 millimeter base. Yeah, I don't know much about that. Isn't that a Games Workshop game? Drop Zone? I don't know who makes that one, but yeah. So you know, I can see them doing a 10 millimeter game in the Star Wars universe. It would really allow for a lot of stuff. And the thing is, it's not all going to be ground units. You can also have your hover units. You can have your U-wings. You can have your LATs dropping off troops. You can have all of that. And then you can have starfighters. Basically like Star Wars Battlefront. All right, the stuff that you would get in Battlefront. You can have all of those vehicles. Lot of stuff like that. So I am definitely a fan of that idea. Because that fills a role that hasn't already been filled. How is Florida these days? The weather is great right now. It's nice and cool, and I'm going to be priming some stuff. You know, we just had Maul and Anakin come out, and if you guys saw my Anakin unboxing tomorrow, the Maul on video should be up by tomorrow, so you can check that out. And then we got more stuff to paint and prime too. But yeah, so somebody asked about Armada versus. I'll take some questions and stuff too. I'll work questions in. Armada versus Crisis Protocol. It depends on if you want to just buy like either one. The core set's $100. With Crisis Protocol, a core set's all you need. You don't need anything else. You are ready to play with 2 players, full games at $100. So you're getting a better gameplay value right there. Armada is more of a competitive game. You probably need to buy 2 core sets. And if you're going for the original core set, you're gonna need more than 2 core sets. You need like 3 core sets to really fill up a list. So Like, but Armada Clone Wars 2 core sets I think ought to do it. You just want more Imperial Assault. Yeah, Imperial Assault. I don't know if I have a feeling they're going to keep going with Imperial Assault because it was Steve Horvath specifically that talked about Imperial Assault. I think we'll see Imperial Assault come back. I think it'll come back in kind of like a 3rd edition. I think it'll get like the Descent treatment, how they got a whole new big box. I think we'll get a new Imperial Assault big box as more of that story-driven game. But whatever they do with Imperial Assault, I hate the tiles and having to put your maps together. Like, it takes so long to do that. I don't like that about playing that game. And yeah, and I guess there's room. I kind of like. It'd be kind of cool if if it came out as app driven, so you could make it a fully cooperative game. They seem to be doing a lot of stuff that way, and I think there's room for that. It's not exactly what I want right now, but I would try it. I would certainly try it. I'd be happy to review it. So Asmodee, if you want to send me that, I'll definitely review it. But yeah, will Armada ever see a capital anti-squadron ship? Yeah, there's quite a few. The Raider is a great option for that. The Separatists have great anti-squadron ships. The Munificent we just got a preview of looks like it's a phenomenally good anti-squadron ship. But the Raider I think is the main like squadron hunter. And I think if we get a Dornian gunship for the Rebels, it'll probably be similar. All right, so there's other options. Imperial Assault is definitely one that they could come back and do because there doesn't really exist that miniatures game. Like, you've kind of got the 3 arenas. You got dogfighting, you got big naval battles, and you got ground battles already. But you don't have anything that's cooperative. So an Imperial Assault 2.0 could do that. You feel like with AMG taking over, the expansions are going to be even more expensive. That it is a possibility. I want to say that, to be fair, the expansions are a pretty good value compared to other games. Like, you're getting, like the Maul expansion, you're getting 4 minis in there. You're getting 2 whole different units. Like they do, and the fact that they've done such a good job in getting away from chasing upgrade cards in expansion packs that you don't really need to buy a whole lot of stuff that you don't want just for the upgrades. Like, they're doing a great job with that. So while the cost might get more expensive, and it certainly may, I also want to shine a light on the fact that the value has gone up and the wasted costs have come down. Plus, if you're really a bargain hunter, like, there's all kinds of like blowout sales right now on X-Wing and stuff like that. Heroes of the Aturi cluster, and that there have been some great community co-op stuff. That is a really good point. The $60 Deadpool is nuts. Oh, well, doesn't he come with a terrain piece also? It's 2 minis and a giant terrain piece. Yeah. Well, that's Deadpool being Deadpool. I think that's a funny thing. I can understand it. If you're a fan of Deadpool and don't want to have to spend $60 just for Deadpool, that's a bummer. I would expect, though, there may be some people who buy multiple Deadpools because they want like extra trucks and stuff like that for terrain. There may be some extra people doing that and then selling the spare Deadpool. So you might be able to get a secondhand Deadpool a little bit cheaper. You may be able to split a Deadpool expansion with somebody who maybe already has one that wants an extra truck, because that seems pretty reasonable. I could see like them saying, hey, you know what? I'll pay you $25 for your Deadpool truck, and now all of a sudden you only spend $35. Something like that. I could see that being a thing. That might happen. All right. What are the faction identities of the Republican separatists in Armada? Wow. Well, all right. So we're talking. So if you just joined, we're talking about what new games we might see from Atomic Mass. And so, like, we kind of already talked a little bit about a 10mm game, which I think there's definitely room for that. Basically really, really small troops, but not really focused on the troops, more focused on the vehicles, because we're getting so many more vehicles all the time. But not just ground vehicles, but also hovering and air vehicles that can also support the ground battle. We're seeing a lot more and more of that lately, even kind of like in an X-Wing scale. So, and then we talked a little bit about Imperial Assault. But I mean, I'll come back. I'll do some questions towards the end. We'll talk a little bit more about Armada, so save those. I thought of something Armada related though the other day, and it was I played an 800 point battle with Armada just a few days ago. I didn't make a battle report for it. I posted a picture on Twitter. I got another picture. I took some pictures. The reason I didn't make a battle report for it is because we're getting all new rules, and a lot of things are going to change, like strategic advisors going away, and so this is the last weekend. So by the time it goes up publicly, it will be obsolete. Like the rules, it'll be like an illegal kind of battle report. And so I was just like, I want to probably get on board with teaching new players, and I also wanted to play a game that I didn't have to record. And so I was, it was just for fun. And as so I have gotten in the habit of recording so many of my games that it's really nice to actually like just take a night off and just play. And I wanted to remember that, right? Like, cause that's what we all do. And so it's one of the things I kind of lose out on a lot is I record so many of my games that games become work sometimes. And it's very easy for that to happen. So, but playing Armada, I said to myself, I'm like, even at 800 points, it still doesn't feel like this is an Armada. It doesn't feel like this is really a fleet. So Star Wars pod racing. Yeah, we're gonna get to that. That's on the list. We'll get to that next. So I'm gonna go with this Armada thing. What if they did more of a fleet kind of game? And what I mean by this is, what if they remade Armada in a smaller scale? Now what I'm gonna suggest is gonna make a lot of Armada players furious, and I get that. So let's go all the way through. It would either mean they get rid of Armada and replace it with like a different version, or just come up with a game that is going to probably either take most of the Armada fan base or just fail. But my thought is much smaller Star Destroyers, such that you can actually get, really big space battles as your standard, as the normal battle. And that would be tough because you're looking at Star Destroyers that would be like the size of small base ships in Armada. Like that's kind of where I'm thinking. Maybe a little bit smaller, but I feel like if I could remake Armada right now, I'd have made it in a smaller scale so we could get more. Like honestly, the Starhawk is freaking huge, right? But like so I can get really big ships, and while they're beautiful, movement, like you get enough ships on the board, and all of a sudden you start running out of real estate. You run out of room, and then you can't really navigate as much. So if they were smaller, you could do a lot more. If Armada was like X-Wing sized, you could get a lot more, because most builds in Armada have like around like 3 or 4 ships, right? Like that's kind of the norm, is 3 or 4 ships. And that's on a 6x3, right? Like X-Wing builds is usually 3 or 4 ships, and that's on a 3x3. Plus there's builds that go up to 8, and you still have lots of room to maneuver around. So, on a 3x3. So I feel like Armada needs to have like probably on average of triple the number of ships to feel like an epic space battle. And that's kind of what I would like. So I wonder, or at least there's part of me that is attracted by that idea. I don't know if it's that feasible though, because there's a couple of things I kind of want to be able to do with like a more of a truer Armada fleet kind of battle game. Is I want the Superstar Destroyer and huge ships to be a little bit more to scale. So I would like it if this SSD, were still smaller, but like probably at least twice as big as as it is in relation to an ISD, right? So I think like that would be kind of cool. You would have. I'd also like for it to have room for other epically sized ships, like for example the Mandator 4 from episode 8. Say what you will about the prequel or the sequel trilogy, but there's a lot of ships there, so that can work its way into it eventually. So I'd also like for maybe the door to be open to have stolen or commandeered ships also. So maybe the idea that kind of like how the Empire not the Empire, the Marvel has for Crisis Protocol. You can build a fleet out of whatever you want, but if you're building but there should be some kind of tax to running stolen ships. So your Imperial ships are gonna all get bonuses for being in the Empire, right? And things like that. And so if the Empire wanted to run a rebel ship, it would be crap, you know. And maybe there's like upgrades and stuff that only the rebels can take. I'd also love for a game to not have upgrades. It's another thing. Like there's a lot of things that Crisis Protocol has that I really like. And so I'd rather you just pull out the ship card, you know. And maybe ships have multiple versions. Like maybe each ship has a in-faction version or a stolen, hijacked version. And maybe make the stolen, hijacked version much worse, you know, but it now is available. And so this way you keep your key. Like that would be a really cool thing for every ship to have a stolen version. Like you would imagine the new gameplay opportunities you would open up overnight. Obviously, you make the stolen version of much limited capacity. It'd be really good for flavor, you know, and maybe you even put a limit to how many stolen ships you can have. Like maybe it has to be less than half of your fleet. Like, you know, you couldn't have that many stolen ships, but that would be a really cool thing. Like, I think there's a lot of room for growth in where we are as far as a fleet-based game. Also, we don't have room for the Supremacy, right, which was the ultra huge ship from Episode 8. We don't have room for anything like that. So, like, that's, I think, realistically, the largest thing we could ever possibly get. You know, I would like to also have space stations as well. And so to be able to do really, you know, a smaller scale, but have really bigger fleets, and then the Supremacy would probably take up most of the table, right? Like it would be like really, really big, but that would be the only one that needs to be like that big. Maybe a second Death Star battle. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want the Death Star on the table. Like the Death Star could just be represented by like a line or something. I don't want a planetary game where you have planets. How would you rank the Armada factions in regard to the most powerful? Oh god. Well, I haven't played the 2 new factions yet. I would say I feel like the Empire is probably slightly more powerful than the Rebels, but the Starhawk really does help kind of make that closer. But that's just ship power. As far as squadrons and aces and stuff, the Rebels have some of the better aces, I think. All right, so, but another thing that was mentioned, and I want to talk about this one too, is a pod racing game. That's one that we don't have at all. Now, I'm not 100% sure how this would work and how I feel about this, but I think it could be kind of cool. So let's talk about a pod racing game because, or at least a racing kind of game. It allows you to do a lot of cool different things, and I think you would have to be in the vein of a for fun kind of game. You got a lot of named pod racers already. There's certainly a lot of named racers that exist in Star Wars lore due to also the show Star Wars Resistance. And while a lot of those guys in Resistance are Starfighter, like flyer racers, have I played Nemesis? Oh yes, I have definitely played Nemesis. But yeah, like I think between Resistance, the show Resistance having racing, and then of course Episode 1 having pod racing, I think there's definitely room for that. You certainly have enough different types of speeders and swoops and pod racers that could all compete in a racing game as well. And so I think there's the possibility there. I think there is potential for a racing game. So we have lots of different pods and pod racers that we saw already. I mean, the Mandalorians brought us different types of swoop speeders and pod kind of contraptions. We have a lot of racer characters that we saw in Star Wars Resistance. So I think a pod racer game would have to span all eras, kind of like how Star Wars Destiny did. So it wouldn't be like in a strict timeline. It would be more of a fantasy game, fantasy Star Wars pod racer, right? So something like that could probably work. You could even put creatures in there. I don't know if that's... It really depends on how the game is going to play. Like, I feel like there's maybe room for people to ride creatures like how Obi-Wan rode, the Varactyl, or you have like Luke and Han riding Tauntauns and things like that. Like, so it really depends on if it's going to be strictly a racing game or if it's going to be a mounted kind of Mario Kart racing arena kind of game. Like Mario Kart would be kind of a cool idea if you're going to keep it in the realm of fun and like silliness. Like I think there's some room for that, because if it's going to be strictly like a super hardcore racing game like that, I don't know if that, I feel like you wouldn't be able to fit that on your tabletop. Like you'd have to really, like, you know, but maybe you make the rule sets compatible with either. And then maybe like to do like the Boon to Eve Classic from episode 1, you'd need a table that's so large it would be a game you could only play at conventions, right? That becomes the problem because like you want a game to actually be approachable for a lot of people. So like I feel like Mario Kart is probably a better format for something like that. You can make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more silly. You can put a lot of different characters in there because you have so many people mounted on various things between dewbacks, which might be slow, but they have like some firepower. You got droidicas, which might work. You got the Staps. You've got like all the mounted characters. I'm looking over at some of my Legion stuff. But you've got so many bikes and speeders and swoops. I mean, maybe we even pull from Legends. Like, I think if Atomic Mass Games could get the approval to start pulling stuff from Legends, that would be really, really cool because then you could get like Dash Rendar on a swoop bike or something like that. Like, I would love that. Some Shadows of the Empire era stuff. So that's kind of one of the ideas that I have going on, and that was really, I mean, like it was a pod racer one was really suggested by you guys, but I think it's a great idea. I think it represents a lot of fun, and we still haven't seen all of the different swoop bike things that are available, and also all the speeders. There's lots of like land speeders too. Luke's land speeder, all of the speeders that we saw, and there was a ton of them in Star Wars Rebels. There's a lot there. There really is. And who knows what we're going to see in the future if we get some dude with like a skateboard like this. Have we seen a Star Wars like skateboard equivalent yet? Because I figure like Ezra could have been kind of cool for doing something like that. Will you be doing a what to buy for Armada video? Yes. I am a little backlogged on videos that I need to produce and create right now, so I'm I'm still getting caught up. But I will be doing what to buy for Armada as of I expect those to be mid to late next week is when I'm hoping to have those up. Darth Maul was in Tony Hawk back in the day. Yes, he was. That was actually really cool. So I would love it if they, like if they did it doesn't have to be the pod racing Mario Kart thing, but I would love it if they did like a Star Wars game that's more like just for fun, like almost a borderline silly, right? Like that would be really cool. Like for example, what if they did Star Wars skateboarding, right? Like that sounds more of like a video game. That would work. That would be awesome as a video game, as a matter of fact. Like hoverboarding or something like that. But like that would be really fun. Because maybe I'm ready for something that we don't have to take so seriously. I'm ready for a good Star Wars goofy for fun game. To balance a holiday special. Yeah, Lego Star Wars is another opportunity that could make its way into tabletop as well. I wonder, but then now the licensing and the cross promotion would probably be a nightmare because you not only do you have to get approval from Lego, you also have to get approval from Lucasfilm. Right, or vice versa. You have to Lucasfilm first. You all then have to have Lego approve everything that you're doing, and then on top of that, so yeah. Like if there was like a Lego based miniatures game, I think Lego would be the ones to make it. I don't think that I don't think the Asmodee would be able to pull that one off. But that would be interesting. I'm also kind of hoping that that they do a game that is cross-compatible with other games. Like if they were to do a Crisis Protocol that is compatible, a Star Wars Crisis Protocol that's fully compatible with Marvel Crisis Protocol. Or vice versa, be able to bring some Marvel stuff into Legion. Like what if they did Marvel Legion, right? And then you've got like, even if it's smaller factions and less stuff, but what if you got like Nick Fury leading a whole like squads of shield troopers going up against like MODOK leading a bunch of AIM troopers, and then you've got all your heroes and stuff like that could go into something like that, and you got like a Quinjet as your heavy, like that would be really cool, and like you play it all by itself, but make it compatible with Legion if you want to, like I would love that. I think that would be really cool. You might. I don't know the rules as far as like making it tournament compatible or just casual play compatible, but I think that would be really fun because tournaments and stuff, especially when things get photographed, there's stories about how like Legion table, all of the tables had to be approved by Lucasfilm because they didn't want, because it was a high level event, Marvel Legion sounds like it could be really fun. I mean, especially with all the different characters they have right now too. and you could have a very different feel. Maybe you have low-level heroes as core units. Maybe you have singular one miniature core units in a game like Marvel. Like that could be like Black Widow and Hawkeye, for example, because they're kind of lower powered units, could be core units, like 4 health core units. And like that could be really fun. You have one unit that's got 4 hit points running as your core. Black Widow tangles with some stormtroopers and she takes down like 4 of them or something like that. You know, like I could see that being like a balanced kind of thing. Lord of the Rings Legion would be neat too. That is probably easier to fit into the standard kind of format of lots of minis. Like I could see that being a thing, yeah. So yeah, like there's a lot of different options, a lot of things that they might do. I think it's fair to say whatever they do will be miniatures based. I would be really shocked if Atomic Mass Games comes out with like their first new Star Wars game and it's like an LCG. That would be kind of like, can you guys imagine if they would do something like that? Like that would be kind of weird if they were to do like a board game or LCG, like, and a board game that is kind of light on minis. Like, what if they were to reprint Rebellion, for example? An LCG is a living card game. So a game, it's basically a card game that occasionally comes out with expansions of card games. But unlike Magic the Gathering, you don't buy random boosters. You buy a box that has exactly, 2 of every card in it or something like that. Do you think they will shake up X-Wing or half of the models are unsellable? Yeah, I think I've heard rumors, and I don't know, and really they're just rumor because it's way too early for them to have settled on anything and started production on anything. But I've heard rumors that they're looking to go back to X-Wing 1.0, which is really interesting to me. I think if they did something like that, it would be a 3.0, and it would go back to 1.0, and it would still use all the same models. But look, I think there's a lot of things they could do to X-Wing. I think they did a lot of damage. I think if they do another change to X-Wing, it's going to be it's gonna drive so many more people from the game. I mean, I don't know exactly how popular X-Wing is right now compared to how it used to be. I know there's still a lot of people playing it, but I don't know if it's already peaked, is my question. I feel like it's already peaked. I know it's peaked with me, in that it's still a fun game, but it's not like it was my everything at one point. And that may be in part that, 2.0 definitely did damage to it because, 2.0 I think damaged the IP or the game itself as a whole because so many people left. But there's just shoot, now I'm losing my train of thought. I don't know. There's just damage. Plus there's a lot of other games for me to look at also. So I have limited. I got limited hype. I thought X-Wing, the hype was coming back when they were starting to do more of the large ships because I wanted to do more large ship play. Unfortunately, that's something you really can't do online. They don't have like that, and there's not enough people doing it, and there's not any more large ships being made or huge ships. I mean, like the epic stuff. They only made the Tantive V4 and the Sea Rock. That other Raider never got released. I'm sure they have a warehouse full of them right now. And then they never made the GR75 or the Gazanti again, and they never made any new ones for the other factions. So, like for that was like that was my favorite way to play X-Wing was with the huge ships. I just thought it was fun. I really like having big stuff and putting everything else in contrast. I like to have something that dwarfs everything else on the board. It just gives the battlefield a fun looking feel to me. That's my personal preference, and so I liked having the option to do that. And they never moved forward with it, and now we kind of can't, So you're hoping for a Scum and Villainy faction in Legion. Well, who knows? If they were working on it, who knows what's going to happen now? And vice versa. If they weren't, then maybe Atomic Mass says, you know what, let's do Scum and Villainy. Who knows? I could see it maybe happening. I said for a long time that Scum and Villainy isn't an organization that has a standing army, so it's kind of hard to justify that. But the more I'm playing Legion, the more I realize it's not a standing army; it's more of a crew. And so, you know, like any gang that has enough members could put together an army in Legion. Hondo Anaka could have his own army into which he is commander. The problem I think you may run into is coming out with expansions for that new minor faction, right? And so, and if you do just Scum and Villainy as a whole, then you got to take all the bounty hunters out of Legion or out of the Empire, for example. And then, you know, like there's a whole lot of characters that you have to pull from other factions. You like the ideas of affiliation coming into Legion. Yeah, kind of like how you do with, like, it's so simple. Sometimes the simplest answer is actually just, you know, so brilliant. Like with the way they've done Marvel Crisis Protocol, and you can build an army of whatever you want, but there's a penalty if you don't build an army that at least should go together mostly. And so I would love to see, you know, every single unit in the game have the option of being like a turncoat or stolen or a traitor side to just about everything. And have it be like maybe a weaker version or something like that, or maybe in some cases a stronger version. You know, we know Callus is coming out for Legion, and I'm curious how Callus is going to work, if he's going to have a traitor mechanic. I don't think so. I feel like this is Imperial era Callus, and that leaves room for a Rebel version of Callus too, which, like, that's exciting because then you'll have command cards that you can use on either side too, which is like all kinds of weird shenanigans can potentially happen then. But yeah, so like I want to go back to like I talked about Rebellion. Like I wonder if like Atomic Mass will take over Rebellion, releasing like an expansion for that, or a reprint, or a second edition for Rebellion, because there's a game that has miniatures, although it is a board game, right? It uses a board, it has cards and stuff like that, but it also has miniatures. So I feel like you could do a second edition of Rebellion, and I think that could be a really fun thing to do. Especially if you take the cardboard components, like all your standees for your commanders and stuff, and then you make those into miniatures. Now you could do a Rebellion second edition that has more minis, maybe a few more ships. You combine the expansion to it, and you add a few new things that it should have had all along, like Grand Admiral Thrawn. You know, I wouldn't mind seeing that, but you keep the same basic gameplay. You know, like I would love to see that, because Rebellion is the greatest two-player game in all of history, in my opinion. It's my favorite two-player game. So like that's a cool option I think could happen. So I see a lot of people talking about Imperial Assault. We talked about that a little bit earlier in the video, but yeah, I think the Imperial Assault could come back. I mean, Steve Horvath talked about Imperial Assault not being done yet. He talked about that earlier in this year at Gamma with his interview with the Team Covenant. And he's he's made it clear Imperial Assault's story is not over yet, but it's going to be a long time. So you guys just have to wait. But it still sells. We're still reprinting it and all of that. Imperial Assault was not listed in the handoff, but they did say the Star Wars miniatures games, and so it all boils down to what Asmodee wants to do with it, and that's a great question for somebody high up at Asmodee like Steve Horvath. Is for now, at least what are your plans for Imperial Assault with regards to this handoff? Is that to be deemed to remain under Fantasy Flight Games, or is that to be handed over to Atomic Mass, as far as reprints, or as in regards to future stuff? You know, they probably wouldn't talk about the future, but I'm curious about the reprints, or are they going to even reprint it anymore? I wonder if they have changed their mind on that, because maybe, you know. I don't know how long this whole plan of moving games from one studio to another was in the works, but, you know, at least as far back as February, the plan was to, you know, they had this 3-year plan for all their miniature stuff with Lucasfilm, and all of these games had this whole 3-year plan, and it was, you know, it was the strongest 3-year plan in history, and now this happens, and I'm like, all right, how does this impact that 3-year plan? You know, and somebody asked me earlier, like, why do you look so nervous about a lot of this stuff? That's one of the reasons why. So, you know, we've talked about a couple of different games that we might see. We're getting more ships for Armada. Yeah, there's a whole bunch more coming out in a few days, or like in less than 2 weeks. We've got a lot of stuff coming out for Armada. Huge. The Clone Wars is coming out, and then there's another wave which presumably is already in development. but we'll have to see. Like wave, it was supposed to be January for the wave 2 of Armada Clone Wars. That may get pushed back. I hope not, though. Like, if this, and that's what's going to kind of tell me if this was kind of a knee-jerk reaction or if this was, like, planned really thoroughly. Because is Ahsoka coming to Legion? If it was FFG still doing Legion, I would say, yeah. Now that it's Atomic Mass, I got to say, I mean, probably. I mean, like, honestly, my optimistic side says that, all the stuff that you want for these games should still be coming to these games. For those of you who follow Alex Davey and have seen the news about Alex Davey, you probably have seen that he's no longer employed. And so that came as a really big shock to a lot of folks. I had spoken to him before that, so I knew, but until it was public, I didn't want to talk about it because that's people's personal stuff. I will say he's not the only person, but I'm not really at liberty to talk about everybody else who is no longer employed, and that's their business, But like there was a lot of people let go, a lot. So this, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who. Like one of my big questions for Atomic Mass is who are the new developer teams going to be? Because hopefully it's people that have worked on these games before, So we're going to have to see. But as far as other games, like I'll be really surprised if they do something like Outer Rim. Like Outer Rim is long overdue for an expansion, and we haven't seen that, so I'm curious what's going on there. I'm really curious if FFG is going to keep doing any Star Wars related stuff. I'm also curious if FFG is going to keep doing Marvel Champions and in big licensee stuff, or if they're going to eventually move that stuff away. And then what happens to the other licenses? I would watch over the next year to see more things get pulled away from FFG and go to other places. I mean, moving these games was the biggest move. Like moving the RPG was a big deal. Their Star Wars RPG is phenomenally good. I love it. My favorite RPG of all time. But they also moved the sleeves and the extra products and stuff to Game Genic, which was not, it was a small deal. Like a lot of people didn't even care. They're like, all right, whatever. Because that was kind of masked as a Keyforge related move, I'm like, okay, sure. But moving this stuff was huge. This was, I think, like when you're trying to rip a Band-Aid off, if Asmodee is actually trying to dismantle FFG, and that's a big if that's what they're trying to do, this was like the biggest part of the Band-Aid kind of getting ripped off, and now the rest is just going to be like, the biggest shock. Like when you get waxed, when you're waxing your chest and you go whoosh, and you still have a little bits left, but you got most of it off, and you started shouting Kelly Clarkson as loud as you can. I mean, I've never done that. So, but anyway, hopefully you guys are doing well. I'm missing some of the chat here, so let me try and take some questions from you guys here. Handoff seems like something Asmodee did to fit FFG. They already cut. Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with that. Does the new rule work with open transport? Can you elaborate on that? I mean, your stuff on open transport can shoot. You got to read. I mean, it's on the rulebook. I went over it briefly. I haven't gone back deep into the rulebook yet. I will when I start building it. But apparently, you can put eWebs on there now, which and just have the eWebs like be your mobile. Like that's what there's the big thing for the Empire right now is that eWebs can go on there. Palp can shoot his lightning out of there, and like those like the big things. For the Rebels, I don't know. Maybe Drive by Han. Putting Han in there and letting him do Gunslinger out of that. Kind of makes up for his short range. I don't know. It's interesting. The Rebels could really kind of benefit from using that as a transport because it's only 60 points. So, yeah. Let's see what else we got. I hope Atomic Mass breathes some life back into X-Wing. The player base has gone down that much. Well, I mean, this has been a tough year. It's really hard to gauge things right now because so many people are stuck home. I know that some people are still going out. And you know, I think every situation is unique, but there's a lot of risk in going out, even to a store, even if you're wearing masks. Now, masks are a great mitigation to help hopefully prevent you from spreading a disease to somebody else. And you know, and hopefully that works, and it really should work. I mean, I've been going to work every day, and all of us are wearing masks, and nobody has gotten it yet, but other folks in my area and that have come into our building have gotten it, and the precautions have so far proven to keep it from spreading or keep that spread very, very minimal. So if you're being diligent about the stuff, there's still a chance, but we're not out of the weeds yet. And that's reflect. And I'm not saying that to talk about an epidemic. Really, you know, to talk about its effect on games like X-Wing, Armada, and Legion. It's hard to play these competitive games. That's why organized play is not a thing this year. That's why there's no, you know, it has been no conventions and all of that. So this is a tough year to really gauge how these games are doing. This may be the best time if you need to take one of these games and kind of, you know, cut it off and start over with a fresh edition. This might be the time. And I hate that says, or I hate that like feels so harsh. And I don't, you know, I'm only saying, like, if they're going to do it anyway, probably better to do it now than in the middle of a competitive season or something like that. Because this way, when things open up again, people can be like, all right, I wasn't buying stuff anyway. You know, I feel like that's probably a good way to go. But I'm curious what's going to happen with X-Wing. I really am. The biggest thing for me with X-Wing is the cardboard chits, the cardboard tokens. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I just don't. Like, and there's so much individual stuff for every single ship, like with all the maneuver dials and stuff. Like, I would love, like, if I were redesigning an X-Wing style game, you know, I would put, you would just have your base. Might even borrow a thing from Armada and have two different bases, so you can run like two different versions of each X-Wing or something like that. That could kind of be fun. But really, I'd just have the one base that goes in there. I would also, I like how Armada has the movement tool. So what I would love to see is fewer dials. And I just have a dial go to each ship. And the ship, it would say what moves are legal and what moves are illegal on its actual ship, on its unit card, maybe on the back side of its card or something like that. So you'd know what was available to it, and then you just dial in. So you don't have to go through a bag, because in addition, like, hey, I want to fly Wedge and an X-Wing. All right, and now I have to go through a bag full of, you know, or a bucket full of cardboard chits to find the one that has Wedge. But then I also have to go through a whole bunch of little discs to find one of the T-65 X-Wings. So like it makes it very a pain. Honestly, it makes it a real pain in the butt to pull out a list. So that's kind of why I used to play all factions, and now I'm like, no, I'm just playing Republic now, because I'll play other stuff like you know, online through virtual reports and stuff like that, just because it's too much to sort through. Like it became a real pain in the butt, and like they could have gotten rid of that when I went to 2.0, or at least the cardboard bases. So that's really confusing to me. And I think what you do is you make your special dial, right? And you have every maneuver. You have all the ones, all the twos, all the threes, the 4 and the 5, and with the K turns for both the 2, the 4, and the 5. And I think you give everybody a special 1, you know, special 1, special 2, special 3, special 4, and special 5. All right, so you kind of have a bigger dial, but it's got special 1 through special 5. And that is going to correlate to those guys that have unique movements, like a backwards move or a stand still or whatever. And that just allows you to do everything on one dial. And that's what I would do for X-Wing, which make it easier for people to play and make it easier for people to store their stuff. Because for me, storage is a big deal for me. But that's, you know, I'm not a game designer, but I think that would, if I were part of that team, that would be my contribution. Let's focus down on making this stuff a little bit easier for people to kind of, you know, like, you'd also shrink the cost of everything. You don't have to put quite as much cardboard in every single ship now, too. You know, all right. So Imperial Assault, you know, a lot of people have asked about that. I think there's definitely room there because there's no competitive. There's all the Star Wars stuff is competitive, kind of tournament-y, and I think there's definitely room for that cooperative campaign kind of thing. And that's what Imperial Assault really brought to the table. So I think if Imperial Assault comes back, it probably won't have skirmish mode. I mean, it might. I think it'll be primarily, that come in as a story-driven kind of cooperative thing. And those cooperative games are popular. Look at Marvel Champions. Look at Arkham Horror and all those other games. So there's certainly that. I also really wouldn't mind a larger fleets kind of battle, but at the same time, I'm gonna take a throwback here and try something a little bit crazy, and this is gonna be the last one I talk about. Who remembers an old PlayStation game called Masters of Teras? Because I would love to see them do something like that. Have like a game in the kind of vein of like Street Fighter or Marvel vs. Street Fighter or something like that. Have a Masters of Teras board game where and again, spanning all eras. It's a fun game. It's kind of like an arcade game on your tabletop. You can do bigger miniatures. Think closer to Marvel Crisis Protocol, maybe even a little bigger than that. And I'm inspired a little bit by like the format of like the Street Fighter miniatures game, or even Star Wars Epic Duels. I'm inspired by that a little bit, and that you can have teams. You can play. Basically you work out a good fighting game. Probably with some card play. Every character has their own deck, and that's it. You play with their deck of cards, and you have a card sheet for them, and you fight. And you can put terrain on there too. Like you can use a lot of your same terrain and totally make that work. But you make these battlefields. Maybe a grid, maybe a playmat that's like got a regular 1-inch grid or something like that. Maybe you do something maybe 1.5-inch grid, right? So you do something like that. You make a Masters of Teras board game. You've got so many fighting characters. You've had Teras mentioned by name. And enough, like especially in Solo, a Star Wars story, I think is the most recent. But like you could put everybody in there. You could even have there's so many cool things you could do. You'd have your individual heroes. You could have people that have like minions. Like Thrawn could come in, but maybe he's not the best fighter. He's certainly a capable fighter, but maybe his thing is because he comes in with his other rook that does the fighting for him, right? So you could do that, and like this has inspired a lot of like restoration games. Is their Unmatched is a phenomenally good game. All right, so if you haven't checked out Unmatched already, I've got videos for that. Search for Crabbok Unmatched. I've got some reviews and some some unboxings and stuff. But like that would really work for a Star Wars miniatures game. For them to do something kind of like that. The Gamorrean, oh yeah, from the Mandalorian. Wait, absolutely. Right? Like how much in the Mandalorian is paying tribute to all of us 30 and 40 somethings who grew up with all of this cool stuff that we're totally geeking out about, right? And even higher than that, like even people older than that, you still were exposed to all of this stuff. So Mandalorian is really tickling the sweet spot for all of these things. I think it's a great opportunity to get a different type of game. And I'd love to do a fighting game that's Star Wars, especially one that could play quick. Because in addition to just looking about the battles that we don't have already, let's look at the types of games and the audiences that aren't catered to already, right? Because if you had a good fighting game down, now all of a sudden you have a good engine for a multiplayer game, right? Oh, did 3 people show up to game day? No problem. Boom, 3-player match. Just like in wrestling, right? You can fit any combination. Do what you want. You can do a handicap match. If you got 6 players, you can do a 3 versus 3, or you can do 2 versus 2 versus 2. So 3 different teams of 2 each. You can eventually put bigger things in there. You can put like a Rancor in there, and now you can have a scenario where it's everybody versus the Rancor. Stuff like that. All kinds of cool things you can do with a game engine like that. And you can make the Rancor, give it for player control. You can make an AI deck for it if you want to go up against the Rancor. So you can put cooperative stuff in there. Like a Teras miniatures tabletop game would be awesome. I would love that. And yes, absolutely you add Jedi too. You look at the Masters of Teras game as kind of a blueprint. You had everybody who was like, you didn't have to study the art of Teras itself. You did have like that one character who had the Iron Fist, or the Steel Fist, which is what Teras stands for. But you had Luke and Vader, you had Mara Jade, which, oh my goodness, if they do a Masters of Teras Kasi game, they need to put Mara Jade in there. They need to get the Legends license, right? They need to just get more permission to do Legends characters. Well, I think if anybody's going to give us Mara Jade, I think there's a real good chance that we'll see that show up in The Mandalorian or something that Dave Filoni does. I think we're going to see Mara Jade. I think we'll see her. I don't know. All right, so that's it. I mean, I'm really hoping for a Masters of Teras Kasi game, but I think there's a lot of different possibilities. I mean, because presumably they're going to do more games. They'll presumably have miniatures in them, so it won't be. Hopefully, it's not card games or only card games. And kind of hope they follow and anything new that they do. I kind of hope they follow the idea that Atomic Mass has done with Marvel Crisis Protocol, and that's not having an overwhelming amount of upgrades. Like, have most of your stuff on the card. I'd also love if they did like an Armada 2.0 or something like that. I'd love for every ship to have a hijacked version on the other side, so you allow everything to be used across faction in a weakened state. That would be really cool. What do you do for online Armada? I don't. Although I sometimes play against you guys. You know, I have done that. I think when the Clone Wars comes up, for all you Armada players, I think I'm doing another community type of battle. So that's an option. All right, we're going to go ahead and shut this thing down. But I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out. We will talk to you later. Stay tuned for Darth Maul coming tomorrow. I think we may be getting another Armada article next week. Possibly two. It really depends. It's a holiday week. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Thanksgiving. And there's certainly a lot to be thankful for. I know this has been a rough year. I know this has been trying times, but we have a lot to be thankful for. More on that next week. I'll talk to you soon. I want to thank you so much. And as always, have a great day.